Okay, so when I was a kid, I never played with Barbies much. I was never really into like any girly things. What I did was I sat around and I read a lot of comics with my dad. So the battle has raged on for decades. You've heard it in the schoolrooms and in comic book shops. Who's better, Marvel or DC? Most comic book fans know the answer in their hearts. For some, it's an irrational love. For others, it's a nostalgic tradition. Some base their opinion on look and feel, while others look to storylines they relate to most. I want to settle the argument that Marvel Comics is overall superior to DC Comics in the categories of heroes, games, and movies. Who has the best heroes, Marvel or DC? For this category, consider the impact of heroes on our culture and how they've utilized in comics and other media. Consider heroes that resonate with you most. So I'm going to give a few examples with Marvel first. So Marvel, there's Captain America, the only successful product of America's super soldier program. A man thrust out of his own time. Captain America is America's finest soldier and a living symbol to all. He wields a shield, an unbreakable shield, and once socked Hitler in the jaw. Iron Man, a drunken playboy found a higher calling with his brutal injury, forced him to develop an advanced suit of armor to keep himself alive. He now uses his greatest creation to build a better legacy for the Stark name. Spider-Man, a bite from a radioactive spider morphed puny Peter Parker into a spectacular Superman. He uses enhanced strength, web, and sarcastic wit to fight against his foes. So, and then a few for DC. Batman, a vengeful billionaire, devotes his entire life to dressing as a bat and pummeling the criminals of Gotham City. The Flash, a connection to the Speed Force makes Flash the fastest man alive. The Flash mantle has been passed down over generations, and now an entire family of speedsters defends the citizens of DCU. Superman, the first and greatest superhero. The last son of Krypton became Earth's premier defender and champion. Superman possesses incredible powers, including flight, strength, and the ability to disguise himself. According to a poll taken on crack.com, the company with best heroes was Marvel, with 65.95% of the vote. So who has the best games, Marvel or DC? For this, consider the impact of the titles on our gaming culture and how faithfully characters and overall translates into the game environment. So there's two games that are particularly big in the gaming environment. Marvel Ultimate Alliance, MUA applied the simple addictive formula of Gauntlet and Baldur's Gate. Dark Alliance to Marvel's heroes, focused on teamwork and light RPG elements, featured dozens of playable heroes and villains. And then DCU Online, an ambitious attempt to turn DC Universe into a living, breathing game world. It allows gamers to design a flight alongside DC characters, but critics point out that the technical difficulties were found in a lot of MMORPGs, which is a computer thing. According to a poll taken on GameStop.com, the company with the best hero game was Marvel, with 55.25% of the vote. Who has the best movies, Marvel or DC? For this category, consider the impact of the films on the superhero genre and the movies as a whole. Think about the critical response as well as nostalgia. Think about the quality of the films when they came out and how they stood the test of time. Batman. Christopher Nolan's gritty sequel, The Dark Knight, is the third highest grossing domestic movie of all time, featuring an Oscar-winning performance by the late Heath Ledger. According to IMDb.com, opening weekend, the film grossed $150,411,483, and the total gross in overall was $533,316,061. Whereas Iron Man, the movie that kicked off the journey towards the Avengers, plenty of high-flying heroics and charismatic performance by Robert Downey Jr. set this one apart. According to IMDb, opening weekend of Iron Man 3, the film grossed in $174,144,585, which is well over 30,000 more, well over 30 million more than Batman did in the opening weekend. And the total gross in since May, the 10th of May, which was only 7 days, was $2,284,893,000, which is almost half of what the Batman did overall the entire time it was in the theaters. And a poll was taken on IMG.com. The company with the best films was Marvel, with 70.73% of the vote. Winning the categories, Marvel came out on top as the ultimate superhero universe as picked by voters throughout society. It was a war valiantly fought by both parties, but ultimately, Marvel came out on top.
I like to see more. I know.
Talk about noise.
Excuse me.
I like to more. That's just because I grew up on it, but Marvel is like better than other shows like that.
So Jenny, what did you think?
I like your intro. The fact that you started off with that you weren't girly when you were little. That you did read comics. That this is something you're passionate about. Your thesis was clear. That Marvel is better. I liked your preview. It was very clear. You had really good examples of the superheroes, the games, and the movies. You cited your sources really well. The thing is, you read a lot off of your papers. You didn't make a ton of eye contact. And the numbers when you were talking about the movies were a little confusing. But besides that, I liked it.
Well, yeah, I think the number thing emphasizes the fact that you're dependent on the script because you're reading every digit in the, it's, 174,942,872.12, that sort of thing. And first of all, we don't need that specific amount of detail. You could just say 178 million and that would have been fine. But because you're reading it, it emphasizes the fact that you're doing that on so many other things too, and I think that that's one of the things that takes away from the delivery of the speech. I'm a little iffy on the way the subject is as a persuasive speech, but I'll tell you what, I thought you did a pretty good job setting up a criteria, giving us a structure. The only thing that I think is a little problematic is that the payoff for each of the supporting points basically seems to be coming down to some kind of poll that we're using. On the first one, when you're talking about the characters, it's a poll on crack. On the second one, when we're talking about the games, it's a poll in some gaming publication. In the third one, it's basically coming down to box office returns. By the way, if box office returns were the measure, these movies would not be as good as Transformers, and if Transformers was a character, a comic book thing, then they would be the best in that particular category. And I don't think anybody looks at those movies and say, oh, those are the best movies. Iron Man 3 pretty much blew. I'm sorry, it was not a good movie. And when you compare it to some of the other movies that you're talking about, it's making a ton of money, but it's not a good movie. It's just not. Sorry to screw anybody's expectations on this one. No spoilers. Not good. Is it entertaining? Yes. Is it a good movie? No. Nobody's going to remember it in 2 years. It'll just be one of those movies that existed. So I think you've got a little bit of a problem there, because from a critical point of view, I think your standard of comparison is problematic on the movie one. On the character one, that's sort of a subjective thing. I think you diss Batman in the opening description. You do give appropriate props to Superman on that one, and then you in essence say Superman is the origin of all these kinds of things. So why is it that DC Comics loses out? Because 55% said they like the Marvel characters better. I'm going, well, wait a second. You just told us how these other characters are the essential beginning of this whole process, and now we're going to leave it up to a poll. And that seemed to me like kind of a disappointing way of resolving those issues. So I think that if you're going to make those arguments and you set them up the way you have, you need to have a stronger payoff on those particular points. Apparently the most controversial thing I've said to date.